The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the viewport of the HSS Paradox, its darkness broken only by the distant twinkle of stars. Captain Jaho Park drew a deep breath as he gazed at the reflection of his ship in the reinforced glass. The Paradox was unlike anything humanity had ever built, a marvel that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about shipbuilding. The ship's quantum-shifted hull plates rippled like water under starlight, creating patterns that seemed to defy reality itself. Each plate was carefully engineered to exist in multiple states simultaneously, making the vessel appear to shift and flow like liquid metal. The effect was both beautiful and unsettling, especially to the alien species who had first witnessed it during the ship's unveiling. Captain Park remembered the laughter and mockery from the Galactic Council's shipwrights 6 months ago. They had called it impossible, a waste of resources, a human folly that would never work in actual space combat. Those same critics had fallen silent when the Paradox performed its first test flight, disappearing from their most advanced tracking systems as if it had never existed. The bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as the crew worked at their stations. Holographic displays cast a soft blue glow across their faces, showing streams of data that would have been incomprehensible to anyone without months of specialized training. This was no ordinary crew. Each member had been handpicked for their ability to think beyond conventional space warfare doctrine. Lieutenant Haenul Kim's fingers danced across her engineering console with practiced precision. She had spent 3 years helping develop the probability drive, and there was no one in the galaxy who understood its complexities better. "Captain," she called out, her voice carrying a note of pride. "Engineering reports the probability drive is at full capacity. All quantum field generators are synchronized and stable." The probability drive was the heart of the Paradox, a revolutionary propulsion system that didn't just move the ship through space, it moved it through possibility itself. The theory behind it had been laughed at by every major physics institution in the galaxy, until a team of human scientists proved it could work. Captain Park nodded in acknowledgement, watching as status indicators shifted from yellow to green across the main display. The ship felt alive under his feet, a subtle vibration that spoke of barely contained power. This was what humanity had achieved by refusing to accept the limitations others took for granted. Commander Tadwan Lee approached, his footsteps nearly silent on the bridge's padded deck plates. The ship's executive officer carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen his share of battles and emerged stronger for them. In his hand, he held a datapad displaying the latest simulation results. "Captain, you'll want to see this," Taiwan said, extending the pad. "The latest simulations confirm what we suspected. The Paradox's design makes us virtually invisible to standard targeting arrays. They simply can't compute our position." Park took the pad, studying the complex graphs and figures that scrolled across its surface. The simulation showed enemy targeting systems trying desperately to lock onto the Paradox, their computers overloading as they attempted to calculate the position of a ship that existed in multiple states at once. "Show me the failure points," Park requested, and Tadwan highlighted several sections of data. The results were even better than they had hoped. Not only did standard targeting systems fail to lock onto the Paradox, but they also showed signs of cascade failure when they tried to compensate for the ship's quantum state. Around them, the bridge crew continued their work, each focused on their specialized tasks. Ensign Eugene Cho monitored the quantum field harmonics, making tiny adjustments to keep the hull's probability field stable. Lieutenant Jae Sung Kang kept watch over the sensor arrays, which had been modified to function despite the quantum interference that would have blinded normal systems. The ship's artificial gravity shifted slightly as the probability drive adjusted its output, causing several loose items to drift momentarily before settling back into place. It was a reminder of the incredible forces they were working with, forces that the rest of the galaxy had deemed too unstable to control. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Park ordered, handing the datapad back to his XO. "I want to know exactly how our quantum signature appears to different classes of sensors. If we're going to revolutionize space warfare, We need to understand precisely how invisible we really are. Taiwan nodded and moved to comply, but paused as new data flowed across his screen. Captain, there's something else. The probability field is having an unexpected effect on our energy emissions. We're not just invisible to targeting systems, we're creating what appears to be a temporal wake. Anyone trying to track us is seeing our position seconds in the past. This was new information, another piece of the puzzle that made the paradox so revolutionary. The ship wasn't just breaking the rules of conventional space combat, it was rewriting them entirely. Every test revealed new capabilities, new ways that human innovation was pushing beyond the boundaries of what was thought possible. As the stars continued their eternal dance outside the viewport, Captain Park allowed himself a small smile. The paradox was more than just a warship. It was proof that humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to think differently, to challenge accepted wisdom, and to find new paths where others saw only walls. The quantum-shifted hull continued its mesmerizing ripple, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Soon, very soon, they would show the galaxy exactly what this ship could do. But for now, they worked, they tested, and they prepared for the moment when the impossible would become reality. The calm of deep space shattered as three ships tore through the fabric of reality, their sudden appearance sending ripples through the void. The Meridian pirates, known throughout the sector for their ruthless tactics, had chosen their ambush point well. Their vessels, converted warships bristling with stolen weapon systems, surrounded the HSS Paradox in a perfect triangle formation. The bridge crew of the Paradox tensed at their stations, but years of training kept their movements precise and controlled. Ensign Sun Mei Choi's fingers flew across her tactical display as she assessed the threat. Captain, I'm reading multiple targeting locks. They're using advanced tracking systems, military grade. Captain Park stood calmly at the center of the bridge, his posture relaxed despite the danger. He studied the tactical display showing the three pirate vessels, noting their positions with professional interest. These weren't common raiders. Their formation and equipment spoke of military training and substantial resources. Signal analysis complete. Lieutenant Hae-Nul Kim reported from her station. Their targeting systems are from the latest Centaurian defense fleet. They must have raided a military convoy. The pirates' weapons powered up, their energy signatures painting bright warnings across the Paradox's sensors. Green targeting beams swept across the ship's quantum-shifted hull, trying to establish a lock on a vessel that seemed to flicker in and out of reality. They're charging weapons, Sun Mai announced, her voice steady, reading multiple missile tubes opening. They're preparing a full spread. Captain Park's lips curved into a slight smile. Now we'll see what the Paradox can really do. Engage the probability drive. Execute pattern delta. Hae-Nul's hands danced across her console, initiating the complex sequence that made the Paradox unique among all ships in known space. The quantum field generators spun up to full power, their deep hum resonating through the ship's structure. The effect was immediate and stunning. The Paradox seemed to blur, its form becoming indistinct as it existed in multiple positions simultaneously. The pirates' first volley of missiles streaked through empty space, passing harmlessly through where the ship had appeared to be just moments before. Their targeting computers are trying to compensate, Hae-Nul reported, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. They're attempting to predict our position based on standard evasion patterns. Their systems are targeting every possible location they think we might be. Which means they're targeting none of them, Park concluded. He watched as another barrage of weapons fire dispersed harmlessly through the quantum probability field surrounding his ship. Status of our weapons systems. All weapons show ready, Captain, Sun Mai responded. Targeting solutions available for all three vessels. The pirates were growing frustrated. Their ships broke formation, trying to establish new firing positions. Their weapons continued to fire, filling space with energy beams and missiles that passed through phantom images of the Paradox. Their main computers are showing signs of strain, Hae-Nul noted. The targeting systems weren't designed to track an object in multiple quantum states. They're approaching cascade failure. Captain Park nodded. This was exactly what the simulations had predicted. Bring us about. Target their propulsion systems. Let's show them what happens when they challenge something they don't understand. The Paradox's own weapons were specially modified to work with its quantum state. As the ship shifted through probability space, its targeting computers calculated firing solutions that accounted for both its own quantum uncertainty and the movement of its targets. Firing solutions locked, Sunmai announced. Ready on your command. The pirates had begun to realize something was wrong. Their formation had become ragged as their computers struggled to maintain target locks. Communication signals between their ships showed increasing signs of panic. Weapons free, Park ordered. Disable their engines. Let's give the galaxy its first demonstration of what humanity has achieved. The Paradox's weapons fired, beams of energy striking with perfect precision, despite the ship's quantum state. The pirates' shields, calibrated for conventional weapons, offered little protection against attacks coming from weapons that seemed to strike from multiple points in space simultaneously. Within moments, all three pirate vessels hung motionless in space, their engines dark and their weapons powerless. Emergency power flickered through their hulls as their crews struggled to understand what had just happened. Enemy vessels disabled, Sunmai reported. Their weapons and propulsion systems are offline. Minimal damage to their life support and crew sections. Captain Park nodded in satisfaction. Send the standard surrender request. Inform them that if they power up any systems without permission, we'll be forced to demonstrate more of our capabilities. The bridge crew maintained their positions, monitoring the disabled pirate ships with professional detachment. This first real combat test of the Paradox had proven more successful than even its designers had hoped. Surrender signals received from all three vessels, Haynul announced. They're requesting medical assistance for some minor injuries sustained during the engagement. Acknowledge their surrender, Park ordered. Inform regional security forces of our position and status. Let's see what the galaxy makes of this. As the adrenaline of combat faded, the bridge crew exchanged quiet looks of pride. They had just demonstrated that the Paradox was more than an experimental vessel. It was a revolution in space combat, a ship that could render conventional military doctrine obsolete. The quantum-shifted hull continued its ethereal ripple, now marked with the faint scorch marks of weapons that had managed to find one of its probability states. Those marks would be easy to repair, but Captain Park decided to leave them for now. They were proof of the ship's first combat victory, the first step in showing the galaxy that humanity had changed the rules of space warfare forever. Administrator Do-hyun Kang's hands trembled as he reviewed the sensor data for the 100th time in his office at the Galactic Science Academy. The holographic displays filled the air around him with streams of numbers and readings that defied everything he had learned in his 60 years of studying physics. This shouldn't be possible, he muttered, adjusting his viewing screen. The human ship exists in a quantum superposition at a macroscopic scale. Everything we know about quantum mechanics says this cannot happen. The data from the Paradox's encounter with the Meridian pirates had spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every scientific institution clamored for access to the sensor readings, trying to understand how a ship could exist in multiple states simultaneously without collapsing into a single position. In the main conference room of the Academy, dozens of the galaxy's leading scientists gathered around a large holographic projection of the Paradox. The ship's image shifted and blurred even in recorded footage, as if reality itself couldn't quite decide what it was seeing. The energy readings make no sense, Professor Min Seo Park, the quantum physicist, pointed out to her colleagues. The ship appears to be drawing power from probability itself. It's as if it's harvesting energy from paths not taken. The Paradox had become more than just a warship. It was a challenge to the fundamental understanding of physics that had guided galactic science for millennia. Its victories against superior forces weren't just military achievements. They were demonstrations of principles that most species had dismissed as impossible. In his office aboard the Paradox, Captain Park reviewed the latest messages from the scientific community. The questions were always the same. How did it work? Why didn't the quantum field collapse? What were the humans doing that everyone else had missed? Another request from the Academy, Commander Taiwan reported, entering the office with a fresh datapad. They want to send a team of observers to study the ship in action. Park smiled slightly. They're still trying to understand it through their traditional framework. That's why they can't see the truth. The truth was deceptively simple. Human scientists had approached quantum mechanics from a different angle. While other species had accepted certain limitations as unchangeable laws, humanity had seen them as challenges to overcome. In the Academy's quantum physics lab, Administrator Kang ran another simulation. The computer tried to model the paradox's behavior and crashed, its processors unable to handle the calculations required to track an object that refused to commit to a single position in space-time. The humans must have developed new mathematics, he told his research team. Their understanding of probability and quantum states has evolved beyond our current models. A junior researcher, Jai-Yun Lee, raised her hand. Sir, what if we're approaching this wrong? What if the ship isn't breaking physics at all? What if it's simply using principles we never thought to explore? This observation caused a stir in the lab. The gathered scientists began to discuss new theories, trying to bridge the gap between their understanding and the reality they were observing. Meanwhile, on the Paradox's engineering deck, Lieutenant Han-Nul Kim was conducting routine maintenance on the probability drive. The quantum field generators hummed softly, their energy readings showing patterns that would have given most physicists headaches. It's beautiful, isn't it? She said to her engineering team. The way the quantum fields interact, creating paths through possibility itself. We're not breaking the laws of physics, we're just the first to really understand them. The ship's success had sparked a revolution in scientific thinking across the galaxy. Species that had long considered themselves masters of physical science were being forced to reconsider their most basic assumptions. In the Academy's Central Library, researchers pored over human scientific papers that had previously been dismissed as fantasy. Ideas that had been laughed at were now being studied with intense interest, as scientists tried to understand how humanity had seen what they had missed. Administrator Kang organized an emergency conference of the galaxy's leading physicists. The meeting room was packed as he presented the latest findings from the paradox study. We must accept that our understanding of quantum mechanics has been limited by our own preconceptions, he concluded. The humans haven't broken physics. They've shown us that physics is far more flexible than we imagined. The revelation was spreading through the scientific community like wildfire. Every major research institution began revising its fundamental theories, trying to incorporate the new understanding that the paradox represented. Captain Park watched all this with quiet satisfaction. The paradox was more than a defensive tool. It was a key to unlocking new possibilities, a demonstration that the boundaries of science were often just boundaries of imagination. As the ship moved through space, its quantum-shifted hull rippling with possibilities, it carried with it a message that was changing the galaxy's understanding of reality itself. The impossible was only impossible until someone proved otherwise. The scientific revolution had begun, and at its heart was a human ship that dared to exist in ways that no one had thought possible. The paradox hadn't broken physics, it had expanded it, showing the galaxy that there were still new frontiers to explore in the most fundamental laws of the universe. Commander Taiwan's footsteps echoed through the quiet bridge as he approached Captain Park with news that would change everything. His face carried the weight of what he'd just learned from Galactic Council communications. 5 fleets, he announced grimly, his voice cutting through the normal hum of bridge operations. The Galactic Council has authorized joint operations to contain the human threat. They're mobilizing everything they have. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances at their stations. Their success had created fear among the established powers of the galaxy. The paradox represented something they couldn't control or understand, and that made them dangerous in the Council's eyes. Lieutenant Hae-Nul Kim pulled up the tactical display, showing the positioning of the incoming fleets. Red dots appeared across the star map, each representing hundreds of warships gathering at strategic points. They're coordinating their movements. The Centaurian fleet is approaching from the outer rim. The Arcturus battle group is moving to cut off our retreat vectors. The Orion Defense Force has committed 3 carrier groups. Ensign Sun Mai added from her tactical station. They're bringing their new quantum tracking systems, the ones they claimed would counter our advantages. Captain Park studied the tactical display with calm interest, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. The combined fleet represented the largest military force assembled in the past century. Thousands of ships, millions of crew members, all focused on capturing or destroying one human vessel. They still think in terms of conventional space warfare, Captain Park observed, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Set course for the Quantum Nebula. Let's show them why that's a mistake. The bridge crews straightened at their stations, understanding the audacity of their captain's plan. The Quantum Nebula was considered unnavigable by every species in the galaxy. Its strange properties distorted space itself, making normal sensors useless and conventional propulsion systems unreliable. Plotting course through the nebula's outer boundary, reported navigator Min-Ho Kang. His fingers danced across the controls, calculating a path through the challenging space. The radiation will interfere with their targeting systems even more than usual. Commander Ta-1 moved to his station, coordinating the ship's defensive preparations. The fleet commanders will expect us to run. They've positioned their fastest ships to chase us toward their heavy weapons platforms. Captain Park nodded, watching as the tactical display updated with new enemy positions. They're thinking like hunters tracking prey. But they forget, sometimes the prey turns out to be the predator. The Paradox's engines hummed as they adjusted course. The quantum-shifted hull plates rippled with increased intensity as they approached the nebula's boundary. Strange colors danced across the viewport as the ship entered the region of distorted space. First wave of pursuit ships detected, Sun Mai reported. They're launching long-range scanning probes, trying to track our quantum signature. Let them try, Hae-Nul said with quiet confidence. The nebula's natural quantum fluctuations will mask our presence. Their sensors won't know which distortions are us and which are natural phenomena. The pursuing ships grew bolder, pushing their engines to maximum as they tried to close the distance. Their commanders were eager to be the ones to capture the infamous human vessel that had embarrassed so many of their colleagues. They're spreading out, Ta-1 observed, trying to form a net to catch us. Standard containment doctrine. Captain Park watched the enemy formations with professional interest. They're using tactics developed for normal space and normal ships. Initiate full quantum field dispersion. Let's remind them why those tactics don't apply to us. The Paradox's probability drive engaged at full power, causing the ship to exist in multiple states simultaneously. To the pursuing fleet's sensors, it appeared to split into dozens of possible positions, each as real as the others. Their targeting computers are struggling, Hae-Nul reported with satisfaction. They're detecting us in multiple locations. Their formation is starting to break down as different ships chase different quantum echoes. The massive fleet, so coordinated moments before, began to show signs of confusion. Ships adjusted course to chase phantom readings, breaking their carefully planned containment pattern. They're sending orders to regroup, Sun Mai announced, monitoring their communications. The fleet commanders are arguing about which signal is really us. Captain Park nodded. Everything proceeding as he had anticipated. Take us deeper into the nebula. Let's see how their conventional wisdom holds up when reality itself becomes uncertain. The Paradox glided into the heart of the quantum nebula, where space itself seemed to twist and fold. The pursuing ships hesitated at the boundary, their commanders unwilling to risk their vessels in the unpredictable environment. They're holding position at the nebula's edge, Ta-1 reported, establishing a blockade pattern. They think they can wait us out. They don't understand, Captain Park said quietly. In here, Where quantum effects rule, we're not running from them. We're preparing to show them exactly what they're dealing with. The bridge crew settled into their stations, ready for whatever came next. They had trained for this, prepared for this moment when they would prove that humanity's understanding of space warfare had evolved beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. As the nebula's strange energies swirled around them, the paradox waited, its quantum state merging with the natural phenomena around it. The hunt had begun, but the hunters would soon learn they had become the hunted. Deep in the engineering section of the paradox, surrounded by humming quantum generators, Lieutenant Hae-Nul Kim and Chief Engineer Min-Ho Yoon stared at their readings in stunned silence. The data streams flowing across their screens showed something that went beyond their expectations. "Look at these temporal markers," Min-Ho said, pointing to a series of fluctuating numbers. "Every time we engage the probability drive, there's a pattern here I've never noticed before." Hae-Nul leaned closer, her eyes widening as she followed the calculations. She had helped design the probability drive, but this was something new, something they hadn't predicted. The quantum field wasn't just affecting where they were, it was changing when they were. "Run that sequence again," she requested, fingers flying across her console. "I want to see the field harmonics during our last engagement." A holographic display filled with new data, showing the complex interactions between the ship's quantum state and the space around it. Patterns emerged that seemed to defy conventional physics, yet the evidence was undeniable. "The probability drive doesn't just affect our position," Hae-Nul said slowly, her voice filled with wonder. "It's influencing cause and effect itself. We need to tell the captain." They gathered their findings and hurried to the bridge, where Captain Park was monitoring the blockading fleet's positions in the quantum nebula. The enemy ships still held their distance, unwilling to venture into the unpredictable space where the paradox waited. "Captain," Hae-Nul called out as they entered, "we've made a breakthrough. The quantum field manipulations are creating localized temporal variations. We're not just moving through space differently, we're sliding between moments in time." Park turned from the tactical display, his expression showing intense interest. "Explain." Min-Ho brought up their data on the main screen. "When we engage the probability drive, we're not just existing in multiple positions. We're existing in multiple moments, choosing the most advantageous timeline from countless possibilities. That's why enemy weapons never hit us," Hae-Nul continued. "The ship isn't just avoiding their fire, it's selecting realities where their attacks missed. We're not predicting their shots. We're choosing timelines where they failed." The bridge crew gathered around, trying to understand the implications of this discovery. It explained so much about their successful engagements, about why the paradox seemed impossible to hit. "Show me the temporal variance readings," Park requested, studying the complex patterns. "How much control do we have over this effect?" "That's the interesting part," Min-Ho explained. "The ship's quantum state naturally seeks the path of least resistance, the timeline where we survive. But with adjustments to the field generators, we might be able to influence which possibilities we access." Hae-Nul pulled up simulation data. "Look at these patterns during our last battle. Every time enemy weapons fired, the ship shifted not just in space, but microseconds in time. We were literally choosing the future where their targeting was wrong." The tactical implications were staggering. The paradox wasn't just a ship that could be in multiple places. It was a vessel that could select its own destiny from infinite possibilities. "Can we expand this effect?" Park asked. "Use it actively rather than passively." "Theoretically," Hae-Nul responded. "We could modify the quantum field generators to seek specific temporal states. Instead of just avoiding damage, we could choose the most tactically advantageous position in both space and time." Commander Ta-1, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. "This could explain why conventional tactical doctrine fails against us. They're not just fighting a ship that can be anywhere. They're fighting one that can choose the best possible outcome for itself." The engineering team spent hours explaining the details, showing how the probability drive's effect on space-time had been hidden in their data all along. It was a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about their own ship. "We'll need to recalibrate the quantum field generators," Minho said. "Now that we understand what's happening, we can optimize the system for temporal selection as well as spatial displacement." Captain Park absorbed all this information, seeing new possibilities opening before them. The 5 fleets waiting outside the nebula had no idea what they were truly facing: a ship that could choose its own fate from infinite possibilities. "Begin the modifications," he ordered, "but keep this discovery closely held. The less our opponents understand about our true capabilities, the better." As Hanul and Minho returned to engineering to start their work, the rest of the crew looked at their ship with new eyes. The paradox wasn't just breaking the rules of physics, it was operating on a level that made those rules irrelevant. The quantum generators hummed with renewed purpose as the engineering team began their modifications. In the heart of the quantum nebula, where reality itself was uncertain, the paradox prepared to demonstrate capabilities that would change the nature of space warfare forever. They weren't just avoiding defeat, they were choosing victory from an infinite array of possibilities. And soon, the waiting fleets would learn just how impossible it was to fight an enemy that could select its own destiny. The golden light of the Helios star filled the viewport as 30 massive capital ships surrounded the paradox. Their hulls gleamed with menace, weapon ports open, and targeting arrays locked on the seemingly trapped human vessel. The combined fleet had finally managed what no one else had achieved. They had cornered the infamous ship. "Fleet positions confirmed," Commander Taiwan reported, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. "They've arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around us. Every possible escape vector is covered by multiple ships." Captain Park stood at the center of his bridge, watching the tactical display with unusual interest. The enemy vessels glowed as red markers on the holographic projection, their positions forming an unbroken wall of firepower. "Multiple targeting solutions locked," Ensign Sun Mai announced from her station. "They're using new predictive algorithms. Their computers are trying to calculate our probable positions before we move." "Perfect," Park smiled, surprising his crew with his calm demeanor. "They're still thinking in probabilities. They still don't understand what they're dealing with. Engage full quantum field manipulation. Let's show them why that's not enough." Lieutenant Haynewell's hands moved across her console with practiced precision. "Quantum field generators at maximum power. Temporal variance systems ready. We can execute a full spectrum shift on your command." The enemy fleet's commanders had planned this trap carefully. Their ships represented the finest technology from a dozen different species, all modified specifically to counter the paradox's capabilities. Their new targeting systems were designed to predict and track quantum state changes. "They're powering up their main weapons," Sun Mai reported. "All ships are charging their primary batteries. They're not taking any chances this time." Park nodded, everything proceeding exactly as he had anticipated. "Initialize the temporal selection protocols. Let's give them something their computers can't possibly predict." The paradox's quantum drive hummed to life, its power growing until the deck plates vibrated with contained energy. The ship's hull began to ripple more intensely than ever before, its form becoming increasingly uncertain to outside observers. "Enemy vessels are launching their first volley," Taiwan announced. "Multiple weapon types incoming. They're trying to saturate every possible position we might occupy." Space lit up as energy beams and projectiles filled the area around the paradox. The enemy fleet had coordinated their fire perfectly, creating a web of destruction that should have been impossible to escape. "Now," Park ordered, "execute full quantum state dispersion." Hanul activated the enhanced systems, and the paradox responded in a way that defied comprehension. The ship didn't just shift between positions. It existed in hundreds of quantum states simultaneously, each one representing a different possible moment in time and space. "Enemy targeting systems are showing signs of stress," Sun Mai reported with growing excitement. "Their predictive algorithms can't handle the number of possibilities we're generating." The first signs of confusion appeared in the enemy fleet's perfect formation. Ships adjusted their positions slightly, their commanders uncertain which of the multiple paradox images were real and which were quantum echoes. Their main computers are trying to compensate, Hay Newell called out. The number of quantum states we're generating is overwhelming their processing capacity. The paradox continued its impossible maneuver, each quantum state generating new possibilities that the enemy's targeting systems tried desperately to track. Warning lights began flashing across enemy vessels as their computers struggled with calculations that exceeded their design parameters. Cascade failures detected in enemy targeting systems, Sunmai announced. Their networks are shutting down. They can't maintain target locks through the quantum interference. The perfect sphere of enemy ships began to break apart as individual vessels lost their ability to coordinate their fire. Some ships shifted positions wildly, their automated systems trying to track targets that existed in too many places at once. Their formation is compromising, Taiwan observed. Gaps are appearing in their coverage. They're losing their tactical advantage. Captain Park watched as the enemy fleet's carefully planned trap dissolved into chaos. Ships that had been positioned to support each other now risked firing into their own formation, unable to distinguish friend from foe through the quantum distortion. "Take us through the largest gap in their formation," Park ordered. "Let them see that their best-laid plans mean nothing against what we've achieved." The paradox moved with impossible grace, sliding through space in a way that made a mockery of normal physics. To the enemy fleet's sensors, it appeared to be everywhere and nowhere, existing in so many states that tracking it became mathematically impossible. "We're clear of their formation," Sunmai reported triumphantly. "Enemy vessels are powering down their weapons. Their targeting systems have completely failed." The bridge crew maintained their professional composure, but there was no hiding the pride in their accomplishment. They had faced the combined might of the galaxy's greatest fleets and proven that conventional military power meant nothing against their revolutionary technology. "Send the standard message to the fleet commanders," Park instructed calmly. "Let them know that we could have disabled their ships at any time. Perhaps now they'll understand that their traditional approach to warfare is obsolete." As the paradox moved away from the scattered enemy fleet, its quantum field returned to normal operation. Behind them, 30 of the most powerful ships in the galaxy floated in disarray, their crews trying to understand how their perfect trap had been so completely defeated. The turning point had come, but not in the way the combined fleet had planned. Instead of marking the end of the paradox's freedom, it had demonstrated just how far beyond conventional military thinking humanity had evolved. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with tense anticipation. Representatives from 100 different species filled the circular room, their attention focused on the holographic display at its center. Commander Taiwan stood before his fellow officers, delivering news that would change the course of galactic history. "The Galactic Council has requested a formal demonstration of the paradox's capabilities," he announced to the bridge crew. "They're finally ready to learn. After everything that's happened, they want to understand rather than fear." The news spread through the paradox's crew like an electric current. After months of being hunted, of being seen as a threat, the council was ready to listen. Captain Park received the official invitation with quiet satisfaction. This was the outcome he had hoped for all along. Days later, Park stood in the council chamber, facing the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. The paradox hung in space above the council station, its quantum-shifted hull rippling gently in full view of the observation windows. "What you see is not a violation of physical law," Park explained, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "The paradox represents humanity's unique perspective on quantum mechanics. We didn't break the rules of physics. We revealed new ones that were always there, waiting to be discovered." The holographic display showed recordings of the ship's encounters, including the recent battle in the Helia sector. Council members leaned forward, watching with new understanding as the vessel performed maneuvers that had previously seemed impossible. "Your species approached quantum mechanics from an entirely different angle," Administrator Kang observed from his seat in the science section. "While we accepted certain limitations as absolute, You saw them as challenges to overcome. Lieutenant Hay Newell stepped forward at Park's gesture, bringing up technical displays that showed the principles behind the probability drive. The quantum state of an object isn't just about position, she explained. It's about possibility itself. We simply found a way to maintain those possibilities instead of collapsing them. The council chamber filled with murmurs as the implications became clear. The paradox wasn't just a powerful warship. It was proof that their understanding of the universe had been too limited. This technology could revolutionize everything. A council member from the Centaurian delegation noted, not just military applications, but exploration, research, even basic transportation. Park nodded. That's why we're here. The paradox was never meant to be just a weapon. It's a demonstration of what's possible when we look beyond accepted limitations. The ship's technical specifications were shared with the Council's scientific committees. Hay Newell and Chief Engineer Min Ho spent hours explaining the principles behind the quantum field generators, showing how human innovation had opened new paths in physics. The temporal variance effect was an unexpected discovery, Min Ho explained to an eager group of scientists. The ship doesn't just exist in multiple positions, it exists in multiple moments, choosing the most advantageous outcome. Throughout the demonstration, the paradox performed carefully controlled maneuvers above the station. Council members watched in person as the ship shifted through quantum states, now understanding that they were witnessing not just a display of power, but a revolution in scientific thinking. Your victory wasn't in building a superior weapon, the council president observed to Captain Park. It was in showing us that our understanding of reality itself needed to expand. The council chambers buzzed with discussions of new possibilities. Species that had been enemies found common ground in their excitement over the scientific breakthrough. The paradox had become more than a ship. It was a symbol of what was possible when different perspectives came together. We request that human scientists work with our research teams, Administrator Kang proposed. This discovery is too important to keep isolated. It should benefit all of galactic civilization. Park agreed, knowing this had been the true goal all along. The paradox had opened doors not just in physics, but in cooperation between species. Its quantum state drive would lead to new ships, new discoveries, and new ways of exploring the galaxy. As the formal demonstrations concluded, Park stood with his crew watching the council members depart. The fear and hostility that had surrounded the paradox was replaced by excitement and possibility. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to break the rules, Park said quietly to his crew, but to discover new ones that were always there, waiting for someone to look at things differently. The paradox continued its patrols through space, but now as a symbol of innovation rather than threat. Its quantum-shifted hull rippled with possibilities, carrying a message to every corner of the galaxy. The impossible was only impossible until someone dared to think differently. As other ships began incorporating the new quantum technology, developed through cooperation between species, the paradox's legacy grew. It had shown that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization wasn't force or power, but the ability to see beyond accepted limitations and reveal new horizons for all species to explore. The story of the paradox became a lesson taught in schools across the galaxy, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful breakthroughs come not from breaking rules, but from understanding them deeply enough to discover new ones that change everything.